Hello and a good morning, a good afternoon, and a good evening to you, however you may be listening and wherever you may be listening. This is the latest edition of the Borden Sports Media NFL podcast. Now, before we get started, I do just want to have one little bit of housekeeping, if you would, and that is the fact that this morning I did go in and have a temporary crown fitted on my mouth, and I am recording this podcast in that sort of sweet spot. If anyone's ever had any sort of dental surgery done to them, whether it be a root canal, whether it be a filling, whether it be, well, not necessarily wisdom teeth, I know how that works, but if you've ever had anything done to your mouth and you've had to be put on those numbing injections and have that numbing jelly put on your mouth, I'm sort of in that sweet spot between the numbing effect still working, so I can't really feel any pain in my teeth, and it wearing off, so that I then feel the the effects of the surgery afterwards. So if I have to stop this because all of a sudden I start to get a little bit of pain in my mouth, or you start hearing me talking a little bit differently, that is that is why. But hopefully we don't get to that. But anyway, yes, as always, thank you very much for joining us. If you are new, welcome to the show. If you are a returning listener, thanks very much for coming back and making me a part of your week, as you like to do this every Monday. And again, for those who are new, you can subscribe on whatever podcast platform you got this from, and don't forget we are also on various bits of social media, whether that be TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube, all using the same name, Baldwin Sports Media. So go and give us a like, give a subscribe on those platforms as well, and feel free to reach out and talk about, ask questions, leave comments, and who knows, we may see your comments be a part of the show moving forward in the future. So with that being said, let's move on to today's show, and I don't think I should be talking about this just because of I want to say it's a non-story, but I mean, a couple of these things that we're talking about today are going to be non-stories, but because of the man that's involved, I feel like we have to mention it at some stage. And that is the fact that Tom Brady has basically hinted that he is open to the concept of coming back and playing again. Now, he was speaking on the Deep Cut podcast, which is, a new thing. I'd never heard of it. I will have to admit, but it's basically an interview in the middle of getting a haircut. It's a style. Again, it is what it is, but whatever. But even so, he was basically asked the question, would you be interested in coming back? And he said that he is, in his words, I'm not opposed to it. Now, he did mention that there is some legalese in there because of his role with the Las Vegas Raiders, which he owns a part of them. I don't exactly know exactly what the percentage is, but he does own a small part of them. And it has been discussed previously whether or not he would be able to play, whether or not he maybe have to sell his role in the team just temporarily and then maybe get it back if it were to happen. But he said, I'm not opposed to it. I don't know if they're going to let me if I become an owner of an NFL team, but I do know I don't know. I'm always going to be in good shape, always be able to throw the ball. So to come in for a little bit, like Michael Jordan coming back, I don't know if they'd let me, but I wouldn't be opposed to it. I kind of feel like this is going to be one of those rumors that is never, ever going to go away. We have seen that quarterbacks and players to an extent in general are playing longer and longer these days as science tells us a little bit more, and we're able to, athletes specifically are able to be healthier and look after their bodies a little bit better. That's why, Aaron Rodgers, for instance, at the age he was last year, you probably would have felt 20, 30 years ago, an ACL injury, or the injury that he suffered at his age, an Achilles rather, injury at his age probably would have forced him into retirement. However, now with modern science and medicine, he's coming back for another year, even at the age he is. We saw what Brett Favre did. The ultimate example is, of course, Tom Brady, and the fact that he was able to play rather well into his mid-40s. So whether I just don't know whether or not this story is ever going to go away, just because of what Tom Brady has shown us he can do. And now that he's had a full year of rest and recovery, and I'm assuming he's still on his TB12 fitness thing, even though he doesn't need it to be ready for the next game or for the next season of NFL football. I'm sure he's still keeping himself in relatively good shape. I'm sure that he probably can come out of retirement, but I just I just don't see it. I think there has to be a limit somewhere. Now, the way he talks about, he's still in good shape, he's still going to be able to throw the ball. You're probably going to need a little bit more than that because, again, one, I'd like to say that he's in a good shape, but I just feel that one big good hit from a Nick Bosa, say, or from a Myles Garrett, or from a Max Crosby, although whether or not, because he's a Raider, whether or not he'd have to play for another team or whatever. But a team like that, or a player like that, or a TJ Watt, or a Micah Parsons, any number of these players, one good hit at his age, and you do start to worry about what that's going to do for him long term. Now that's the sort of health side of it. In terms of the name factor of it, Tom Brady coming back to the NFL. Who doesn't say no in that situation? Who doesn't have that little bit of intrigue to say, okay, just how far can the GOAT push his GOAT status and still continue to play? I'm drawn back to a conversation that was on Golic and Wingo on ESPN a couple of years ago when they talked about, I can't remember what the exact topic was, but they got around to the subject of Vince Carter, who for years dominated the NBA dunk contest. And they sort of discussed it should be a thing, because I think Vince Carter was looking to play for a team for at the tail end of his career. And they were saying they should bring him back for the dunk contest every year, even if he's retired, just to see how long it can take before someone loses the ability to dunk. Because for a lot of fans, Vince Carter is basically associated with dunk and dunking and the NBA dunk contest, and they want to see, right, at age 45, can Vince Carter still dunk? At age 46, can he still pull off, 51, whatever. And I think that's kind of the thing with Tom Brady. Like, as much as many people hate him, not him as the player, not necessarily as the person, but because of what he was in New England. Hey, but not being a fan of him, shall we say, as a player, there has to be that level of intrigue amongst most people to say, right, just how long can Tom Brady go on, or how long can a quarterback, in theory, go on like this? What is the limit of human potential, in a way? Because you've heard a lot of people talk about, could Patrick Mahomes maybe play until his 40s, and the fact that he might have to in order to match Tom Brady in terms of Super Bowls. I just want to see. Isn't there that little bit of you that is curious just to see whether or not Tom Brady could still throw the football at a reasonable level at the age of 50? Or maybe not even 50, but at 47 or 48. Isn't there just that little bit of intrigue inside of you that says you want to make it happen? I don't know. But just on a realistic aspect, I can't see any. He says he's not opposed to it, and if someone were to call in the right situation, then we'll have to wait and see. But I just can't see any team willing to take that risk. Again, there's the intrigue factor, but the physicality factor and everything associated to it, especially after a year out of the game, there is the possibility that he's rested up, but there is that possibility that he is, too rusty. He says he wants to keep his arm being able to throw a ball, but all the other factors as well. I just don't see it happening. That's why I think overall it is a bit of a non-story, but here I am talking for about 7.5 minutes about it. But again, we should have to wait and see. There have been weirder things in the NFL that have gone on. So Tom Brady coming back at the age that he is would not surprise me at all, but I just don't see it happening. I just don't see any team willing to take that risk, personally. Now, moving on to the next story, and this one isn't necessarily news. This is talking about an opinion piece that has come out from a very respected journalist, so I think there is some merit to it, and that is the idea that Mike Florio has floated surrounding the Atlanta Falcons and the Minnesota Vikings. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Atlanta Falcons are somewhat embroiled in some tampering allegations at this stage when it comes to the way that they managed to sign Kirk Cousins. I believe I spoke about this on previous podcasts, but I did refer to it on social media, where there were some signs during the free agency period where Kirk Cousins was that free agent and was looking for teams to sign for, that gave a few hints that the Atlanta Falcons had sort of spoken to him before they were allowed to. And the perhaps biggest claim came, ironically, from Atlanta Falcons player Carl Pitts, who said on Pro Football Talk, which happens to be Mike Florio's platform on Peacock, that he and Kirk Cousins had discussed the idea of who was going to wear the number 8 jersey. Because Kirk Cousins wore number 8 with the Minnesota Vikings and indeed the Washington Commanders, and Carl Pitts wears number 8 for the Atlanta Falcons, so there would have been an argument over who was going to wear what. However, all this conversation came out before what the NFL likes to call the legal tampering period was officially meant to start, giving the indication that the Falcons had spoken to Kirk Cousins, as I said, before they were realistically allowed to do so. And Mike Florio has sort of proposed an interesting situation for this in regards to trying to solve the issue again. Whether or not you feel personally it was tampering or not, or outside the legal parameters, or what should or shouldn't be allowed, whatever. The NFL likes to do things their own way, as we've seen with how they punish people for stuff that happens off the field. So there is a chance that the Falcons are going to see some punishment for all this. And Mike Florio believes that last year's draft could actually provide us with something of a precedent when it comes to the punishment that the Falcons are going to receive. And when you look at it, it is a pretty significant punishment, not just for them, but potentially for around the rest of the league. Now, writing in a column for Pro Football Talk online, he has basically said that given the manner in which the NFL handled last year's tampering by the Arizona Cardinals with former Eagles defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon, it's impossible to rule out an announcement that drops just before the first round of the draft. The Falcons have the 8th pick in round 1, the Vikings have the 11th. What if the punishment is as simple as the Falcons and Vikings flip-flopping the 2 picks? The NFL set the precedent last year with the sudden and unexpected news of the Cardinals-Eagles settlement. It would make sense for it to happen again between the Falcons and the Vikings. Now, I know we go off on the NFL a lot for a lot of things when it comes to consistency or inconsistency, whatever the case, or whatever the case may be. But I think this is a great chance for them to, as Mike Florio says, the precedent has been set. If this is what you are going to do moving forward, then let's keep it simple as that. And in a way, you can set the precedent so that it makes it easier for teams to negotiate moving forward. Like, if teams know that this is all that's going to happen, then it does make things a little easier. And, for trading assets or getting a head start on assets is, if all we're going to do is flip-flop picks, then we can at least get a head start and know what we're going to do. So Mike Florio there talks about, how late the Cardinals and Eagles trade was last year, and he talks about the idea of the Falcons and Vikings again having a late one this year. Why doesn't the NFL just go out and do it? The draft starts next Thursday. Why not do it? He talks about it's an announcement happening just before the first round of the draft. If they can get this study and this investigation out of the way pretty quickly, then it can give the teams all the preparation time they need to make whatever adjustments they need before the draft. The Falcons and the Vikings. Now, I did say that this is going to have an impact on the rest of the draft, and this is again something that Mike Florio pointed out in his analysis. And that is, if we are to believe that the Minnesota Vikings want to move up for a quarterback, I believe they do. I believe that they will move into the top 5, trading with either the Arizona Cardinals or, as many people believe it would be, the Los Angeles Chargers to get whatever quarterback is effectively left at the end of after the first run of quarterbacks. If we're assuming Caleb Williams goes 1 and then take your pick from the rest. There's still a lot to be sorted. Drake May, for the sake of argument, Drake May goes 2, Jaden Daniels goes 3. The Arizona Cardinals, as we believe, take Marvin Harrison Jr. with the number 4 pick, so that's a wide receiver out of the way. And then the Minnesota Vikings take the 4th quarterback. Again, for the sake of argument, just because he's the one that's left, J.J. McCarthy, he goes number 5. That's fine. But if they're having to trade from where they are now at 11 compared to 8, where the Falcons are, they're going to have to give up that little bit more to the Chargers to go and get that pick. And as a result, it changes what moves on further back down the draft. Again, there might be that team, say the Las Vegas Raiders, who are suddenly thinking, right, if we want to get a quarterback with the first round pick, we're going to have to give up that. We're going to have to give up that little bit more to get that jump, because they select before the Vikings, but they still want to make that jump to get ahead of them. So it really does change the whole face of the draft, this potential punishment, which, again, if we're going by precedent and if we want the NFL to be consistent, let's hope they get this done sooner rather than later, and we can give the teams their respective chances to get everything sorted out. Because, again, that one trade follows a knock-on, because, if they're going to that, then what does that mean for this team's second-round pick or third-round pick? If it's going to be that quarterback, do the Raiders, again, if they're going to take a quarterback, are they going to jump up in the draft, or are they just going to stick out and twist and maybe go a different direction? There are a whole load of different scenarios that could play out from this, and I think it's fair. I think it would be fair for the rest of the league to know what is going on so that they can make their adjustments, rather than being caught flat-footed and having to make adjustments on the fly on the day of the draft. They can have that that week to prepare to say, right, this is going down, this is happening, we need to make this adjustment. That guy that we have probably won't be there, so now we need to make a quick adjustment. I think it would be fair for, again, not just the Falcons and the Vikings to get their situation sorted out, but the impact that it has on the rest of the league and how they plan for the draft. I just think it would only be fair for basically all involved to get this sorted out as soon as possible, rather than on the night like they did last year. Now, to move away from quarterbacks and to move away from the draft, it kind of snuck up on me, but there are a lot of teams who are returning to practice today as the NFL's voluntary off-season program begins. Now, the key word there is voluntary, and that's the word I very much want to stress, because there have been some stories today about a number of big-name players who have not shown up for training today. It's not necessarily training, it's for off-season programs. And what necessarily goes on, whether or not it is X's and O's, whether or not it's just strength conditioning, whatever. Either way, there are a multitude of clubs that began work today. But a number of key players were not there. The 3 biggest names that have emerged through various reports and press conferences confirmed by the coaches, 2 from the Dallas Cowboys, Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb, and Justin Jefferson, wide receiver of the Minnesota Vikings. Now, these holdouts were pretty much to be expected, and these are due to contractual reasons. CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson are both going into the final year of their rookie deals, both having had their 5th-year options picked up last year, as it would have had to have been. And Micah Parsons has had his 5th-year option picked up, and he is secured for this season and 2025. But for those first 2, CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson, this is effectively the last year on their deals, and both are expecting to, both want and probably you would imagine would get a long-term extension rather from one team. You would like to think it would be from the teams that they are currently on, but depending on how things work out, they may have to get that extension elsewhere. And let's face it, given the production from both players, there is not going to be a shortage of offers of teams that if things do go south, will say, right, give us, we'll pay whatever you want. We want those players on our team. However, I do sort of want to stress that, again, this is the voluntary section of it. And that's why, again, going back to the Tom Brady thing, it's not that big of a story yet. The key word is yet. The fact that it's voluntary and players just don't want to get, risk doing anything major. It's, again, it is on them whether or not they want to do that. Now, the only issue is whether or not this happens when it comes to mandatory training camp and mandatory off-season workouts. That's when it gets a little bit tricky. Now, these players, CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson and Micah Parsons, sitting out right now doesn't really do anything for them. Again, it's a signal, but it's not necessarily the big statement that you might think it could or would be when it gets to mandatory. Because there is so much that goes on through an NFL offseason that it really isn't until June, July, and August comes up that things really start to get serious. That's when game plans start to be introduced. That's when, it's really a chance for older veteran players to meet with the drafted players and the additional free agents. So that's when it gets serious, and that's when a holdout during mandatory camp would be a bit of a story. Now, again, I do expect that these contract negotiations will be sorted out. I expect CeeDee Lamb to get his from the Dallas Cowboys. I expect the Justin Jefferson to get his from the Minnesota Vikings, because these are two players that you simply cannot afford to let go. No, incredible production. Justin Jefferson is arguably the best wide receiver in the league. There's plenty of players who would put themselves in that debate, but Justin Jefferson would be amongst one of the main options in that. CeeDee Lamb not quite at that level, but you've seen what he's done with the Dallas Cowboys. Whatever they do in the future, whether it be with Dak Prescott or without Dak Prescott, he needs to be a part of that. And on defense, Micah Parsons needs to be a part of that as well. I just can't see either team being willing to let them go. So I do expect them to have their contracts sorted out. And that's why I don't think this really is much of a big deal. There will be people who want to try and make it a big deal. But until we see these kind of holdouts, or even to an extent hold-ins that we have seen some people take in the past couple of years, where they will report to training camp and report to mini camp, but only take part in certain drills, not do anything physical at a risk of hurting themselves, anything doing anything majorly damaging to them. Until we get to that stage, I don't think there's really anything to talk about on this front. Again, it's a signal, but it's not necessarily a statement from either of the three players, and that's just those. These are just the three that are the biggest names when it comes to holdout. I'm sure there will be others over the course of the off-season and preseason, but for now it's these three. But for now, it's not really that big of a deal. And to wrap up, I'm going to take us, as I started doing from last week, take us away from the NFL just for one segment for one of the weirder / funniest stories that you might have seen from the week, or maybe you didn't see. And this one surrounds the NBA, which wrapped up its regular season last night. But it wasn't without its joy, and for a lot of teams there would have been some stress about their positioning within the playoff standings, and maybe there will be players that were worried about bonuses and performances of whether or not they hit a certain number of points or assists or rebounds to get bonuses. But that was not on the mind of the Houston Rockets' Boban Marjanovic. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm pretty sure I have not, but we move on. Because, again, you might have seen this on social media and you might have got a lot of joy for it. I certainly did, just in the moment. So the Los Angeles Clippers, who the Rockets were playing last night on the road at it's always going to be Staples Center to me. But they have a promotion on that in the fourth quarter, if a team misses 2 free throws, which is those, I'm sure you know what free throws are, but just in case, it's the one where you stand in front of the basket, no one is around you, and you just shoot free throws. If the opposing team misses 2 free throws in succession in the fourth quarter, then the fans in attendance get free chicken. I believe it's from Chick-fil-A. And I don't quite know how he would have worked it out. Maybe there was, again, the clips I've seen, maybe there was an announcement after he missed his first one that if he misses another, then it's free chicken from Chick-fil-A for people. But either way, if you see the clip, he decided to be the man of the people, as I've seen him crowned elsewhere, and deliberately missed his free throw. And again, did this on purpose. You saw him in the clip being hyped up and saying, it's on me, I'm going to get you guys free chicken. And on the surface of it, absolutely great story. Again, the Rockets weren't fighting for anything. The game didn't matter. If they'd have got on to... Again, the Houston Rockets were out of playoff contention. If they were fighting for a seed, then maybe probably wouldn't have done it, knowing that the game was on the line and what have you. And they ended up winning quite comfortably as well, so it didn't affect the impact of the game. But doing that, just fantastic. Again, we talk about the fact there's not really a lot of personalities in sport now, and that a lot of them are robotic and don't want to do anything controversial. But in that moment, just take it upon yourself to do something fun and seemingly inconsequential, I quite like it. I think sports and life really needs a lot more of that. Just someone not thinking about themselves, not thinking about, his own personal numbers on the day, but giving back to the fans, and not even his own fans as well. This is the opposing team. So shout out to Boban Marjanovic for doing that absolutely incredible story. And with that, our time on this podcast comes to an end. And honestly, I'm very much looking forward to what we get to talk about next week, because next week is the lead up to the draft. I'm sure there'll be a lot of changes in various people's mock drafts. There may be some news, there may be some trades, maybe the Falcons and Vikings thing does come up in the coming days, and we are able to factor that into our predictions for our own mock drafts and predictions on what's going to happen on the day. And again, I'm very much looking forward to it. The draft is one of the most exciting days of the NFL year. Really, even if your team isn't picking, there is still that intrigue of, right, I knew this player from college, or I saw this game, I liked him. Is he going to go to a team within the division? Are we going to stay away from him? Oh, what's the drama? What's the surprises? Oh, should this player have been picked? It's a great day, and I do commend the NFL for turning the NFL draft into the event that it has become over the years. You look at footage from drafts back in the 80s when it was just in a hotel room, effectively. I think it's like the Hilton in New York or whatever. To turn it into the traveling show and the TV event that it has become, they've done an incredible job, and you can see why, because the excitement is there regardless of if your team is on the clock or not. So yeah, next week we will be diving into, again, any late changes to the draft, any late predictions that have come in, any players who are potentially sliding or rising up or down the draft. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. So once again, thank you very much for joining. If you want to leave comments or get involved in the show or get interactive with the show, you can do so. Again, it's on Instagram, it's on TikTok, it's on YouTube, all of them the same, at Baldwin Sports Media. Feel free to leave comments and I will be sure to read them, and maybe you'll be featured on the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you are listening to. And until next week, until draft week, you guys can all take care.